I finished all my work early today, and somehow the sun is still out. A rare and beautiful miracle. That means I've got a few golden hours to do things I enjoy before daylight disappears. Now, I fully understand that my idea of fun is niche, possibly concerning, but I'm committed to making the most of this day and maybe, just maybe, facing one of my greatest fears.
Today, my objective is just to have a super chill day. I want to see something that I wasn't able to see on my first day because it was closed. Then I want to visit some museums and basically just turn my brain off and enjoy San Salvador.
Nestled in the heart of downtown San Salvador, the David J. Guzman National Museum of Anthropology, simply known as MUNA, stands as the nation's foremost guardian of cultural memory. Admission for foreigners is $10, and credit cards are accepted. Yet, long before you reach the entrance, you're welcomed by beauty, works of art, open space, and a sense of calm that feels intentional, almost ceremonial. Founded in 1883 through a collaboration between President Rafael Zaldivar and the renowned scholar David J. Guzman, the museum proudly bears Guzman's name in honor of his lasting contributions to El Salvador's natural and archaeological sciences. MUNA has grown into a vital institution for understanding Salvadoran identity across centuries. Its permanent galleries, rotating exhibitions, and dedicated artistic spaces reflect a nation deeply committed to preserving and interpreting its rich and complex heritage. Upon entering, visitors are met by a monumental mural stretching across the courtyard's inner wall. Bursting with color and symbolism, it traces El Salvador's historical journey, from pre-Columbian civilizations through colonial conquest and civil conflict toward resilience and renewal. The mural functions as both artwork and compass, orienting the visitor to the stories that unfold within the museum's walls. I'm entering the music collection, which includes instruments from every major period of El Salvador's pre-Hispanic past. What you see here is only a small sample, but even that tells a powerful story. There are whistles, flutes, drums, and something called tepunahuastes, large wooden slit drums used in ceremonies. Many of these instruments are shaped like people or animals: monkeys, dogs, turtles, armadillos. Music wasn't separate from nature. It imitated it. These instruments were found all over the country, but especially in major archaeological sites belonging to the Linca, Maya, and Pipil, like Chalchuapa, Carasucia, Cuelepa, and Asanyamba. These places weren't just using instruments, they were making them. That tells us music here wasn't casual, it was intentional, organized, important. So, standing here, surrounded by these instruments, you realize something powerful. Even if the songs are lost, the intention remains. Music has always been how humans connect to each other, to the earth, and to something greater than themselves. And here in El Salvador, that story is still echoing.
Summer is always surprising me in just a bit. It's mid-July, then it's gone, and I haven't moved on. Summer is always confusing me. Honestly, I thought I'd feel warm, but I'm cold. It's getting old. I've said so many times, when summer comes around, I'll be ready for the ride. I'll be ready this time. I'll be ready for it all. But then suddenly it's fall. Next summertime, when I find myself, I'll be better off than last year. This time I'll be fine, I promise. Fine, I promise. Next summertime, when I find myself, I won't turn around, I'll dive head first into the deepest end. I'll face all my fears again.
One of the most renowned Linca archaeological sites in El Salvador is Cuelepa, a ceremonial center located near San Miguel. One of its most striking features is this jaguar altar, a powerful relic from the site's earliest period of development. The name Cuelepa is believed to mean stone jaguar in the Linca language, a fitting reference to this rectangular altar. Carved into one of its faces are the solemn, commanding visages of 3 felines, 2 jaguars flanking either side, their expressions fierce yet restrained, and between them, the prominent head of a 3rd jaguar emerging at its center. The jaguar presence is both imposing and enigmatic, as if guarding a threshold between the earthly and the sacred. Here's some imagery in case it's too faded to imagine. Though the jaguar altar is unique to Cuelepa, its artistic language reaches far beyond the site itself. The carving style and symbolic motifs echo those found at Izapa and Communal Huyu, revealing the unmistakable influence of the Olmec civilization that once flourished along the Gulf Coast of Mexico. This convergence of form and meaning speaks to a wider Mesoamerican world, one connected by trade, ritual, and shared cosmology. The final exhibit is on the 2nd level. This might sound heavy at first, but it's about sacrifice, death, and burial. Surprisingly, all of that is actually about life, about what people believe came after sacrifice, death, and burial, and how deeply they honored that tradition. Front and center stands a life-sized Xipi-Totec, one of the most important deities of the post-classic era. A god associated with renewal, agriculture, and war. His name roughly translates to our Lord, the Flayed One. He skinned himself to give food to humanity, representing renewal and transformation, ideas that shaped how people understood death itself. For the cultures living here, death wasn't an ending. It was a change of state. According to the Florentine Codex, depicted here, each year around March, communities held a 22-day spring ceremony tied to agriculture and renewal. The belief was that just as crops shed their outer layers to grow again, humans did the same, linking death, rebirth, and renewal in a single cosmic cycle. Captives were sacrificed, and priests wore their skins to embody Xipi-Totec, the god of transformation. Processions, music, and ritual dances followed, with figures known as Jijipeme roaming the streets to receive offerings. Many believed these living representations held healing powers. At the end of the cycle, the skins were removed and placed at a temple's base, signaling the close of the ceremony and the return of renewal. To modern ears, it sounds shocking, but for these societies, it was deeply meaningful. It was about life emerging from death, the earth preparing for planting, and the belief that transformation, however uncomfortable, was necessary for survival. Ancient traditions can be intense, but they remind us just how seriously people once took the cycles of nature and rebirth. Human sacrifice wasn't random or chaotic. It was ritualized, symbolic, and tied to beliefs about maintaining balance in the universe. The earliest evidence dates back thousands of years. To these societies, humans were created to serve the gods, and sacrifice, however shocking it sounds today, was seen as a way to keep the cosmos in harmony. These ceremonies were public, highly ritualized, and accompanied by music, dance, and procession. Ultimately, all of this comes back to one idea. Life and death were inseparable. Where someone was buried, how their body was prepared, and what they were buried with all reflected who they were in life and who they were believed to become next. As societies grew more complex, so did their funerary practices, clearly marking status, identity, and belief. What's fascinating is what people were buried with: pottery, tools, jewelry, even food, and animals were included as offerings, basically supplies for the journey to the underworld. Archaeologists can tell a lot from these objects: gender, social status, regional connections, even profession. For example, spindle whorls and grinding stones often appear in elite female burials. Standing here, you realize these rituals weren't about darkness. They were about meaning, about honoring life by carefully preparing for whatever came after. As I leave Muna, I'm struck by how carefully El Salvador tells its story, not as a straight line, but as a living cycle. From music carved in clay and bone, to jaguars guarding sacred thresholds, to rituals that bound life and death together. Every exhibit reminds you that culture is memory made visible. These artifacts are not relics of a silent past. They are echoes of belief, creativity, and survival. Walking out into San Salvador, you carry that awareness with you. That history here is not buried, not distant, but alive, still speaking, still teaching, still asking to be remembered.
Your heart, keep it in your pocket for safekeeping. Don't ever let nobody be the reason you throw it out, you stop caring about it. Don't let your hair get in the way, can't be defined by your mistakes. You know you try really hard, but sometimes you fall. Yeah, sometimes you fall. Sometimes you fall.
Welcome to El Salvador's Museum of Art. Admission for foreigners is just $5, though, truthfully, the art begins long before you step inside. Sculptures, open spaces, and creativity spill into the surrounding grounds, offering a preview free of charge. But while the exterior captivates, it's only an introduction. To understand the fuller story, the layers of expression, history, and identity, you have to cross the threshold. Follow the art as it moves around the gallery, and a story unfolds, layer by layer, century by century. El Salvador's history is presented here in a linear narrative, beginning with maps from the 16th century that reflect the Spanish imagination during the era of conquest. These early depictions portray the land as wild and perilous, populated by familiar creatures like crocodiles and monkeys, alongside fantastical beings like griffins, unicorns, and other imagined threats. Through these images, we glimpse how the Spanish viewed this territory as untamed and mystical, a place both alluring and dangerous. In their eyes, it was a virgin land, rich with resources and mystery, yet one that they believed required conquest and conversion to be understood, controlled, and ultimately saved. In the long sweep of history, being Salvadoran is a relatively recent idea. El Salvador, as a nation, is young. Its deepest roots are indigenous, yet its character has been permanently shaped by Europe. This identity took form during the colonial era, through a profound blending of cultures, indigenous traditions, European systems, and global trade became intertwined, creating a society tied economically and culturally to Europe. Because of this connection, early definitions of El Salvador, how it was seen, described, and represented, were often filtered through a European lens. El Salvador was portrayed not as it understood itself, but as it was imagined and interpreted from the outside. We now fast forward to El Salvador's prosperous coffee republic, which rose in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, at one time comprising 90% of the country's exports. Here, the art shifts its focus toward the human cost, the tortured campesino, the overlooked peasant farmer who sustained the system. After World War I and the stock market crash of 1929, coffee prices collapsed, triggering a deep local crisis with political and social consequences that would echo for decades. New laws, new power structures, and a gradual shift in influence from Europe toward the United States reshaped this nation. That history culminates in one of the gallery's most haunting works, The Crucified Farmer. He embodies the tragic massacre of 1932, the countless unnamed lives lost, and the few we remember. He is Feliciano Ama. He is Farabundo Martí. From the late 1940s through the early 1970s, El Salvador entered a period of modernization driven by a renewed coffee boom, economic diversification, and growing Central American integration. The military government invested in public development without true political openness, resulting in repeated coups. So this era also brought major cultural shifts. Abstract art and new aesthetic experiments emerged. Urban life entered the artistic imagination, and Cold War tensions pushed themes of class struggle to the forefront. From the 1960s to the 1970s, El Salvador entered the tense prelude to civil war. Despite nearly 2 decades of development, the country was marked by political instability due to military rule, coups, regional unrest, and deepening economic and social inequalities. By the early 1970s, political violence was rising, even as grassroots organizations grew stronger and gained widespread popular support. One pivotal moment was the poorly named Football War of 1969. Soccer, to my American audience, between El Salvador and Honduras. It had nothing to do with soccer. Instead, it was about social inequality and land distribution. The wealth of the coffee plantations didn't trickle down to the common man. Wealth never does. The conflict triggered the mass return from Honduras of Salvadorans who had migrated to Honduras in previous decades in search of land and opportunity. regardless of the lives they built for themselves there. Many were forced to come back with nothing, intensifying an already severe land shortage and inequity problem at home. As economic hardship and political repression mounted, public discontent grew. Government efforts to suppress it through force only deepened internal tensions until they finally erupted into full-scale civil war. The Salvadoran Civil War grew out of deep political and economic inequality as power remained concentrated in a small, military-backed, coffee plantation-owning landed elite, while most of the population lived in poverty. Repression, coups, electoral fraud, and systemic injustice sharpened social tensions until they erupted into open conflict from 1980 to 1992. The war left an immense human toll, and in this room, you feel it. An estimated 75,000 people killed, and countless others displaced or forced into exile, deepening divisions across social and ethnic lines. The truth is, bodies are still being uncovered, and we may never know the full extent of the damage. During this period, much of the art responded directly to the war, sometimes raw, sometimes propagandistic. Artists developed deeply personal visual languages that offered intimate perspectives on the conflict. After the Civil War ended and the peace accords were signed in 1992, El Salvador entered a brief and uneasy détente. Despite the findings of the Truth Commission, the lack of accountability for past human rights abuses fostered a culture of impunity and lingering insecurity. Economic reforms followed, privatization, and state modernization. But early growth failed to improve everyday life for most Salvadorans. Instead, the economy came to rely heavily on remittances from abroad and export industries, particularly textiles and clothing. The 1990s were shaped by persistent poverty, inequality, corruption, and violence, conditions that allowed gangs and organized crime to take root. Yet, artistically, the post-war decade became a space for experimentation and reflection. Salvadoran artists expanded their use of materials, surfaces, and visual languages, redefining artistic expression as they grappled with memory, trauma, and the uncertain promises of peace. At the turn of the 21st century, El Salvador entered a period of renewed artistic momentum. Art education expanded, new galleries opened, and the inauguration of this museum in 2003 provided a vital platform for diverse exhibitions and dialogue. This growing cultural infrastructure allowed artists to develop coherent, high-quality visual and conceptual work rooted in the social, political, and economic realities of their time. Encouraged by regional exchange and international opportunities, artists experimented with new materials, ideas, and contemporary visual languages. Competitions, grants, and cross-border collaborations fostered innovation and reflection. In the early decades of the century, much of the work confronted violence and social injustice, while other pieces moved beyond critique, seeking not only to expose problems, but to imagine action, healing, and possibility. What strikes me most is how honestly this museum tells the story. Not as a clean arc of progress, but as a series of reckonings. Again and again, Salvadoran artists returned to the same questions. Who are we? Who defines us? And how do we live with what we've survived? As I step back outside, the noise of the city slowly returns. But I carry something different with me now. Inside those walls, El Salvador wasn't reduced to dates or headlines. It unfolded as a living story, told through brushstrokes, symbols, and silence. Conquest and creation, wealth and suffering, violence and resilience, all layered, all unresolved, all deeply human. Art here isn't decorative. It remembers. It mourns. It protests. It imagines. Even in the darkest chapters, massacres, war, displacement, creativity persisted, refusing to disappear. Completed in 2022 at a cost of $95 million, the Millennium Tower pierces the skyline at more than 400 feet, standing as the tallest building in El Salvador. Rising across 30 levels, 24 above ground and 6 below, it is a statement of modern ambition, where form and function converge. Within its sleek silhouette are residences, commercial spaces, a cafe, and an observatory, transforming the tower from a feat of engineering into a living, breathing center of contemporary life. For $10 and a noticeable pop in your ears on the ascent, you're rewarded with a rare perspective, the chance to see the world from above and the city below, in a way few ever do.
I'm a drop in the ocean, just a face in a crowd waiting to be seen. Big dreams set in motion. I wanna go where no one's ever been. I would climb the highest mountain. I would dive the deepest sea, just so I could make you feel what I feel. Aiming for the sky. Yeah, I really thought we'd make it. Got my head in the clouds, but I can see the world
So my drink is called La Ciguanaba because why not? She's one of my favorite characters. I call her Seaway. We're good friends. We go way back.
I borrowed a little courage from my good old friend and grazed on a small emotional support snack in order to face my next challenge. You may not know this about me, and I prefer not to advertise it, but I am deeply afraid of heights. Don't get me wrong, I love the view from up high. I just prefer it from a safe distance, preferably seated, with a drink in my hand. Now the Skydeck has this nifty little feature for the daring, a lookout with a clear floor that lets you gaze straight down at the street 400 feet below. Yes, below your actual feet. There are truly no words for how unsettling this is. I understand logically that it's not going to break. I know the science. I trust the engineering. And yet, why does it look like there's a crack in it? I'm choosing to believe that's a scuff mark. A decorative scuff mark. It better be a scuff. Someone please buff that out immediately.
Oh, it's really clever. That way you don't have to put in any effort. Don't have to improve it 'cause you're making all the rules, so it's a setup. Oh, it's really clever. Convincing me I don't deserve no better. So the only option here is that I settle. Oh, it's a setup. Ooh.
Anyway, I looked. I survived. My soul briefly left my body, but it came back. And with that, I'm done.
After walking through history, art, and innovation all in one city in one day, let me know in the comments what you think, in one word, defines the spirit of San Salvador. I think it's perseverance. Also, let me know if you think I successfully turned off my brain today. While you're at it, since you've made it this far in the video, please click the like button. It helps more than you know.
Just like the wind, just let it pass through. Just let it pass you. You do what you do. Just like the wind, just let it pass through. Just let it pass you. You do what you do.
Today, I failed spectacularly at not using my brain. I end the day with more questions than answers. And maybe that's the point of travel. Everything I encountered reminded me that El Salvador's identity is not fixed. It's still forming, still questioning, still creating. So, I'll spend the rest of my time here listening more than speaking, observing without rushing, and searching for what reveals itself only in its own time. And whatever I learn along the way, I'll do my best to carry forward and give this beautiful country back the respect it deserves. Stay curious, be inspired, find freedom, wander elsewhere. I'll see you in the next one.